So, hello everyone. Welcome to our newest edition of Hope's webinar series. My name is Justin Wabi, and I will be your host for this evening. So, Hope stands for Harmonies of Pianists Everywhere, and for our sixth webinar, we are honored and delighted to have acclaimed pianist and host of National Public Radio's From the Top program, Peter Dugan, join us. Thank you so much for being here today.
Oh man, it's my pleasure. It's such a fan of what your work entails at Hope, and I think that just for pianists to kind of band together and support one another is huge. It's crucial, and not always something that has happened historically. So I'm really supportive of just this concept of pianists being there to have a community with each other.
Thank you so much. It's really nice to hear that Hope has been around ever since COVID, and that's truly what our mission has yearned to be. And we're really glad that you're aware of that. So thank you.
Totally.
And well, to jump into our conversation today, I would just like to ask you a bit about your background as a musician. After doing a lot of research, you have quite an interesting story, especially through your career as quite, I would say, a multifaceted artist, being a solo pianist, collaborative pianist, and even jazz pianist. And I would like to ask you, what was your journey like to get to where you are now, from like an early age to high school, college, and further on?
Oh man. I think we all have our own story, our own path that takes us to where we end up. And it's still a journey that I'm still on. And I like that. I like feeling that it's still an adventure. But it all started for me at a young age. I have older brothers who played music, and so I was just surrounded by music constantly as a child, and music of all genres. My parents are not professional musicians, but they both play and they both love listening to music of all types. So I grew up listening to as much, Earth, Wind, and Fire and Stevie Wonder as I did Shostakovich symphonies, and that's kind of what formed me into the musician that I am today. When I was in maybe second or third grade, my older brother, who's a saxophonist, jazz saxophonist by training, told me, "Yo, if you're gonna play the piano, you're gonna have to learn how to play jazz." And so he started teaching me jazz at that early age. And by the time I was in eighth or ninth grade, he was taking me on gigs, and I was learning on the job in that sense. And at this, all the while, doing the serious classical training. But jazz was something I was always doing socially and with my brother and his friends. I was like the little kid tagging along with these. My brother's almost 10 years older than me, so it would be like all these guys, in their mid to late 20s, and when I was in high school, I was jamming with them, and it was exciting for me. And I also started playing in a gospel church in high school too, and that influenced me in a very big way, and in the sounds that I enjoy creating. And the interesting thing is when I was in well, interesting to me looking back on it is that I always wanted to be a pianist, but when found myself in about ninth grade, I I was in a situation where some of the directors of the music school that I was studying at the time were actually rather discouraging, and sort of made it seem like uh, I didn't really have a chance at getting into a conservatory and taking that path. And I just didn't want to hear that. So I practiced harder and really upped my game starting my sophomore year of high school. And as a matter of fact, I was waitlisted at Juilliard. Um, and which was a scary moment. And, I got into other good schools that I would have been happy to go to, but I did have kind of my heart set on going to Juilliard. And when I got in off the wait list, it was an exciting time. And but in some ways I couldn't help shaking that feeling when I was a Juilliard student that that maybe I was that I didn't belong, or that I was like, less than the people around me. So um, the way I sort of coped with that was, I mean, one way was just to practice really hard, but the other way was to just try to embrace, like, what are the things that sets me apart and that makes me unique, rather than trying to compare like whose Chopin etude is fastest and cleanest. And like, you know what I mean? Rather than looking for those direct points of comparison, just be like, hey, I like doing this, I like doing that. And that makes me me, it makes me unique. And it's where I find joy, and it's how I connect with other people. And so those things started turning out to be like chamber music, uh, improvisation, multi-genre music, and like at the same time, never stopping to like explore and dig deep into the standard repertoire. So as a result, by the time I left Juilliard, I was sort of carving out a niche for myself where I felt comfortable being me, and I no longer felt this sense of needing to compare constantly. And yeah, and then that's sort of, then things kind of continued and along their way, and I am where I am today. And like I said, still learning, still on the path of adventure.
Oh, that's really amazing to hear. One thing that you touched upon, probably, I would say back in terms of your high school years, something I would like to kind of ask you about is I know that even right now, there still is this like innate philosophy of elder figures discouraging probably young musicians
Mm.
about the choice about going into music. And you said that even though that they kind of pushed on that philosophy, you kind of ignored it and still went on your path. What types of factors or what like mindset made you still go into that direction and into music, even like not listening to them at all?
Mm. It's a great question. I mean, at the end of the day, I think we have to know ourselves. We have to really think about like what are the things that make us happy, and that we believe in. And I think I always believed that I had a future in music, and I loved it, like, so much, and I was willing to do anything. So I think that, in a sense, being told I wasn't good enough to make it made me want to work harder. You know, um, I I even felt that. So I mentioned before that I got waitlisted at Juilliard. I called. There was only one teacher on the faculty who I knew at the time, and so because I knew of him, or we had met a couple times, I had put him down as my requested teacher. So I called him, and I said, "Hey, like, I'm on the wait list. Do I have a chance of getting in?" He was like, "I don't think so." I was like, "Whoa, really?" He was like, "Yeah, no, I'd look elsewhere. I think there are others who probably will get in before you do."
Wow.
So so then when I did get in, you better believe I didn't study with that teacher, like,
Sure.
because I felt so unsupported. I felt like this person doesn't believe in me. So so I was fortunate enough that my first year at Juilliard was Matti Raikallio's first year teaching at Juilliard. So he was, his studio, he didn't have a studio yet. He was just starting. So it was like, hey, let's try this out. And we clicked instantly. But the reason why I talk about all that is because, to your original point, is like, it's so important to find the people who believe in you and then cultivate that relationship. And when you see someone who doesn't believe in you, or who's trying to tell you you can't do it, just be like, hey, thank you, but like, I'm gonna just go my separate way. See you later. Can't
Mhm.
take that too much to heart.
I see. And yeah, that's quite brilliant to hear, especially as I say young musicians. I think it's also important to kind of have no hesitation in terms of pursuing music, because that little, I would say, like ounce of like just doubt of pursuing music could, persuade you to go some other way. So having someone believe in you, like you say, I think truly can be monumental for a musician.
Yeah, for sure.
And moving on, I would actually like to talk a bit about the interplay between classical piano and jazz for you.
Mm.
How has your expertise in both classical and jazz music, and I've even heard about like pop music, shaped your musical outlook and helped you as a musician?
Mm. Man, I've been thinking about that a lot. And I mean, I really think that they enhance, like, the more styles you know, the more genres of music you know, the stronger musician you become in any given genre. But I've been thinking about it a lot recently with the way I think about jazz harmony and how that influences the way I look at um, what we think of as, the classical repertoire. But not only, like, sure, Ravel, right? Like, obviously, um, there's, you know, when you talk about a sharp nine chord or whatever, it's like that. That's an obvious example of where you're going to see jazz harmony coming into play in a classical composer. But you can keep going back, and there's like, I find these passages in Brahms where it's like, um, these like, I don't even want to get too much into the jargon of it, but like these these six chords alternating with diminished chords and the diminished scale, or the octatonic scale, depending on what background you come from and what term you use. But like that diminished scale finding its way into Brahms all the time, Chopin, uh, and so like it, you just get like a really deeper way of looking at harmony, um, and rhythm too, and just the way you feel rhythm and the way you internalize groove. And I think that groove is a word that is like talked about all the time in the jazz and pop world, and we don't talk about it nearly enough in the classical world. Because groove is the concept of groove is so essential to any music, because basically what you're talking about when you talk about groove is how does rhythm like seep into our physicality as we experience a piece of music, right?
Mhm.
That happens in Bach. um like, uh my piano's not hooked up right now, but yeah, it's all the time. Actually, let me see if I can get this hooked up.
I definitely would love to hear.
Do you hear that?
Yeah,
Yeah, if I play, oh, sorry, right? Like, how is that not groovy? You know what I mean?
yeah.
So anyway, I think that the deeper you go into any genre, it's just going to enrich the other genres that you play in. I really feel that deeply. And I think that's, I mean, I've been talking about jazz and classical because that's where I come from, but like people who are deeply ingrained in the Indian classical music world, like the way that, I know because I've talked to them, how that comes back around and influences the way they play Western classical music, and so I know that that's true too. And I think the same could be said in any genre.
I agree completely. As a person that's kind of like whittled away at jazz, kind of starting out, definitely not close to the level you are. It's quite amazing to see the counterplay between jazz harmony and even pieces of classical music, even like late Beethoven sonatas. You can kind of see some sort of groove and some sort of like jazz harmony nestled in there. And you kind of think maybe those classical musicians or composers, as I would say, influence jazz musicians to this day. So it's
Well,
I,
totally. I mean, totally. And it's the same. I mean, the thing is, like, functional harmony is is not tethered to a genre. Functional harmony is bigger than genre, right?
Mhm.
So at the end of the day, like, if you say, right, like, that's, it doesn't matter whether that's what genre you're in, but that's, it is what it is. It's sharp nine, flat nine, or not, whatever terminology you want to use. But it's going to find its way into Chopin, and it's going to find its way into you know into jazz music too. So like, that's just that's just the way music works. And I think that like if you get into the more you improvise also, uh, just remember that like Bach was an improviser, Mozart was an improviser. All of these classical musicians, where we pour over their scores and say like, "Oh God, it's an eighth note, it's an eighth note with the dot, it's an eighth note with the dot and a slur." Ah, like we the way we obsess over these details, which is a beautiful thing. But like these were improvisers, So if we can learn to be improvisers in any style, it's going to change the way we think about the creation of music, right? Because we're going to start, and then we'll approach this music differently, and we'll see, oh, I see what they're doing there. If they're saying, right, oh, they're going and they're taking the upper neighbor and the lower neighbor, right? And so you look at music and you start to think of it as like, oh, it just makes perfect sense because you're thinking at it compositionally.
Very true. And actually, I would like to talk a bit about improvisation. As someone who's quite interested in improvisation and probably isn't very good at it right now, would you have any tips to, I would say, classical pianists that are looking to venture into the world of improvisation, and any advice that you might want to give in terms of starting out?
Yeah. I mean, the first thing that there's a couple of things you can do. One is you have to know when you're improvising, it's all trial and error, So you have to be afraid to play stuff that you're not going to like, because that's how you're going to ultimately discover the stuff that you do like. If you hear something that you like, in a song, I don't care if it's, you hear a Bruno Mars song and you like that, or you hear a Taylor Swift song and you like that, or whatever. But when you hear something that you like, go to the piano and figure out how to recreate it, and then think about why you liked it. Oh, I like that because I'm just trying to think about. Well, what, anyway, the point is, you hear something and you like, oh man, what I really liked there was the chord progression, and I liked how it went from, from the flat 7 to the 1, but the 1 was voiced without the third in it, or whatever it may be. Oh, I really like that. Let me see if I can recreate that in a different key, And that's like how you start to figure out your own toolbox of sounds that you like, Or maybe if you're listening to, you want to specifically improvise in a blues style, maybe you listen to a blues tune and you say, man, I love the way it sounds when they go, wow, why is that so? I actually, that was the thing that happened with me when I was little. I was listening to blues, and I'd always learned the blues scale, right, which is the minor blues, the minor pentatonic. And then I started realizing, man, I love when I hear this sound, right? I was like, why do I love that so much? Well, it's because it's the 6th, right, which is borrowing from the major blues or the major pentatonic, and then it's pairing that with the blue note from the major blues, or the minor third from the minor blues. In any case, I that was one of those things for me where I heard it on a recording, and I was like, yeah, I was little, and I was like, that sounds awesome. And it's something so simple. It's 2 notes, right? It was like, I love that sound. Why and what is it? And then how do I apply it to my own improvisation? And then you gradually build up the things you love and your own sound. So that's how I would suggest going through it. A lot of trial and error, a lot of listening, and then playing along with records. Put on something you love and play along with it, and yeah, and learn the blues scale.
Honestly, I truly love that, like you said, picking at different things. And if you hear something that you really like or really groove with, and just adding that to improvisation, I think that is kind of a point of view that I never really considered. So I definitely will use that for my next improvisation.
Nice. I love that.
And for our next topic, I would like to discuss a bit about a initiative that you founded, Operation Superpower. What inspired you to start Operation Superpower, and could you potentially describe the impact that it has had on the countless children that you have reached?
Oh yeah. Operation Superpower started my sophomore year at Juilliard. I was rooming with a really brilliant composer named Armand Ranjbaran, and a really good friend of mine to this day. And Armand, one weekend, I think it was a weekend, but it was a few days when he just didn't sleep. He had this idea, and he was up composing nonstop for like 72 hours. He just like was like a bolt of lightning of inspiration. And when the dust cleared, he had composed these two arias, concert arias for baritone and orchestra. And one was based on Batman, and the other one was based on Superman. And they were both, I mean, just like he had found this sweet spot between an operatic classical sound and like almost like Hollywood theatrical orchestration. And it was amazing. And so that we had two close friends who were baritones, John Brancy and Tobias Greenhall, and they sang the arias, and it just started snowballing and turning into something bigger and bigger, and ultimately became this school program that we toured all around the greater New York area to public schools, and the whole point of it was that for a musician, your superpower is your music. You know, whether it's your voice or playing the piano, but that's your superpower. And that the idea is like any given person's superpower could be, you know, maybe it's science, or maybe it's just like helping others, or maybe it's caring for the sick. Like, but all those things can be seen as a superpower, and it's our responsibility to like have the self knowledge to find our superpower, and then to figure out how can I use that to actually do good in the world. And we had a blast doing it. You know, we wrote this whole show. It was an interactive program where we would ask the kids like, what is your superpower? And we talked about anti-bullying, and we talked about honesty and friendship and all these things. And yeah, I mean, the first time we actually played it for a show, it was overwhelming to see like the reaction of these little first and second graders. Um, and when we went around the room, you know, with the mic, holding it up to them to say, "What's your super?" And someone said like, "Being kind," and it was, you know, it melted our hearts. So yeah, so it's still continuing. We don't we haven't, because since our careers got really busy, we kind of stopped doing the school shows because we were Tobias moved to Europe, and we've just been, it's been impossible. But we're still actually working together as a group in terms of figuring out what the next step is going to be for Operation Superpower on a larger scale, which hopefully will reach even broader audiences. So exciting things in the works there.
I truly hope that it does reach a even greater scale, because as a elementary school student, I really could have wished I could have had the opportunity to participate in one of the Operation Superpower events that you organized. However, I unfortunately do not live in the New York area.
I hope you would have said your superpower is piano.
And also, I think it's quite extraordinary, and also very very outward to not only spread the message of music, but to also touch upon other lessons such as bullying and friendship, and even kindness. I think that really takes music to a whole nother level and makes it more just relatable to the real world, and it's truly a great message to spread. So.
Yeah, I mean, not everyone is going to become an artist or certainly a musician, but yeah, like the point is when you to cast a wide net, and like, yeah, hopefully we'll find some kids in that group who are like have that artistic nature and are going to witness the assembly program of Operation Superpower, and at the end of the day they're going to say, I want to learn an instrument or I want to sing. um but the point is like, yeah, the what impact can we have on all the other kids out there who maybe their calling is not to go into art, but to, in any case, like, you have, we want everyone to like be a good person, and to feel like, hey, I can be a superhero, I can care for other people, I can I can give back to my community. So, you know, hopefully we reach some people.
Of course, I would love to see that. So thank you. And also, we would now like to talk a bit about from the top. I'm aware that quite recently, in January 2020, you became the host of National Public Radio's From the Top program. What prompted you to join this program and furthermore become the host?
Well, I was an alum of the program. As you may know, I was on this show when I was 18 years old, and I stayed in touch with everyone at the show throughout my career. And you know, it's, in a way, like, it's so important to find your people, you know, as you go through life, to like, to and for me, I felt that with From the Top. Like, it felt like there was a connection there. um so, you know, I'd always been a rather verbal person. um I'd been talking a lot when I first graduated from Juilliard. I'd been doing a lot of work in terms of speaking from the stage and the importance of speaking from the stage. And I had just given a speech at Juilliard about that. And so that was, you know, the whole idea of like being able to speak about what we do was something that was crucial to me. And also, I've always loved collaborating. And so obviously, when you think about the role of the host of From the Top, um, speaking is a huge part of it, and collaborating with other musicians is a huge part of it. So I think when the time came that From the Top was looking for a change, and looking for new voices in their hosting staff, I was fortunate enough to be asked to do some guest hosting along with a number of other alums. And it just felt like a really natural fit from day one. I mean, I first guest hosted a show in 2018.
Wow.
um and it was just like, oh my gosh, I loved it. It felt like, in a way, it felt like, oh, this is what I'm supposed to do. So yeah, I just got I consider myself really fortunate that I ended up with the position.
I see. And so branching off from that question, what were your favorite moments hosting the From the Top program, especially during, I would say, COVID-19 and having everything be in a virtual setting?
Mm. Oh, hard to choose. Hard to choose. One memory that's like I can't get out of my head, and part of it is because it was the last show before COVID. We were in LA in early March 2020, like March 5th, 6th. I mean, it was really like probably a week before shutdown. And and we did this show, and there was a saxophone quartet, and these guys were like so passionate about the saxophone and the saxophone quartet, and they played really well. And and they played great. We taped the radio show in front of a live crowd and everything as usual. And then the next day we did a school show, and they're like, we want to do our Mario, like our Super Mario Brothers, you know, arrangement. We're like, yeah, do it. And they did, and it was awesome. But also, we found out that one of the saxophone players in the quartet is a break dancer. And I was like, dude, you got to do, you got to break dance in the show. He was like, well, how am I going to do that? So we figured out a way, like in the middle of their saxophone piece, where the other three players could keep playing, and he could put down his horn and start breakdancing. Um, it was such an amazing moment because when he did that, the crowd went wild. It was school kids and they went wild. And suddenly it was like, man, these are stars. You know, you could see that they were looking at these weren't like the classical musicians as like the nerd was just like that just went out the window. It was like, no, these are stars. These people are amazing. I want to be like them. Um, so I thought it was so cool when he did that. We also on the same show there's a violinist who I think she was 14 at the time, and she played a Miley Cyrus song, and and it was great, you know. And she also played Brahms, and her Brahms is fantastic, of course. But like her, for her to have the courage to stand up in front of her peers and play it, and I accompanied her on the piano. Anyway, that whole show was like unforgettable for me, and I think like I said, part of it is because it's burned in my mind as the last show of normal times. But throughout the pandemic, geez, there's been a lot of memorable moments of connecting with people. I mean, the first show we made, blanket fort style, as we call it, where we sent gear to all the young musicians and they recorded themselves at home. Um, and we recorded interviews remotely. Like the very first show where we did that was unforgettable because it was like, we all knew like, this is crazy what we're doing, right? We're pioneering something new. And, yeah. So, but I remember every musician who I work with who comes through from the top. Every single one is unforgettable.
I see. And also, I don't think you really hear that every day. A musician playing both Miley Cyrus and then Brahms. I think to kind of host both on a show and playing them consecutively, I think that's kind of extraordinary to hear and something you would not see every day. So,
Yeah, and you know, like the point is, if we want to really, if you want to welcome someone in, whether you're talking about welcoming someone into your home, right, or putting someone at their ease when you're out to dinner, or whatever the situation may be, when we think about welcoming someone, right, that's the way I think we need to think about our audiences, right? Welcome them. So if you're playing for a audience of people who are at the New York Phil every week, you maybe the best way to welcome those people is to start your program with the Bach, partita, right? And maybe that's going to welcome them in, and that's fine. But if you're talking about playing for a group of school kids in Los Angeles, like, don't sit down and play 20 minutes of Bach and think that that's going to give them that feeling of being welcomed, right? That's not to say that they wouldn't appreciate it. But the point is, like, welcome them first, right? Like, so that was the whole idea with the Miley Cyrus, is be like, hey, you belong here. Like, this is your space too. This isn't just a place where I push stuff on you from 300 years ago. Like, this is you belong here. We want you here in this audience. Like, here's something that's going to like just bring you some joy right now. And like, hey, let me also tell you about this guy named Bach, right? So you see how that's how it kind of unfolds.
I see. And having from the top, be supportive of a whole entire group of musicians that plays multi genres and truly being encompassing of everything, I think that's truly amazing. And I think it'd be a wonderful opportunity for any musician that gets to appear on that program.
Listen, Justin, like you said yourself, like, yeah, I kind of dabble in improvisation, but the fact is, I think everyone or almost everyone at least has a curiosity about it, even if you haven't actually sat down and tried playing a pop song or tried improvising. Um, there's Everyone should have a curiosity about music beyond the music of the past. Like, everyone should be curious about music of today and music of tomorrow, and music that comes purely of your own imagination, right? That's not to say that like everyone needs to be a professional improviser or a professional pop musician, but you may be a professional who is, your expertise is music that was written 300 years ago, and that's great. But at the end of the day, like, that curiosity is going to be there, at least to a certain extent, of like, what happens when I sit down and I create music purely from here? or when I sit down and I create music purely based on something I heard on the radio today, right? Like that curiosity should be there, and we should encourage everyone to have the tools to follow that curiosity and see where it takes them.
Of course. And finally, a final from the top question: how have you feel the program from the top shaped your musical career in a broad sense?
Um, I mean, a few things. Like one is that when I was on From the Top, I sang with my group. I was on with a piano trio. We actually sang on the show. I did impersonations. So like I felt this feeling of being empowered to these things that previously would be something that I thought of like don't belong on stage. You know what I mean? It was like Mozart belongs on stage, but like singing and making goofs for people to laugh at, like that's something I do with my friends separately. And like From the Top is like, no, put that on stage too. You know what I mean? Like, whoa, that was crazy for me. And I think that's still for me a big part of why From the Top matters is for young musicians to realize like it's not just Liszt or Paganini or whatever that connects with an audience and that belongs on the stage. It's like it's me. Like actually figure out who am I, and then put that on stage and let that be the thing that connects with an audience. You know what I mean? So that's sort of like the main thing that I took away from my time at From the Top. Plus, it was like I mentioned to you that high school Peter was not necessarily the one who won every competition and got first place at everything. So to be part of From the Top gave me this sense of belonging that I didn't necessarily have. I was like, hey, I can be a part of this community of musicians. I don't I belong here, you know. And that's powerful too, because especially for pianists, I mean, we know that like how isolating it can be, you know, as a pianist. But just circling back, that's what's so great about H.O.P.E is like anything that creates a sense of community that says like you belong, you know, that's really important.
No, I agree too, though. Every musician needs belonging, and without belonging, we turn into a very solitary being, a being that just is separated from a whole entire group of people. And
Yeah.
without belonging, I can't imagine where I would be in music. So having that, I think, is really crucial, and it's great that you mentioned that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And in regards to From the Top, I think it also may have played an inspiration for you to even go into like jazz music, having From the Top be a very encompassing atmosphere to appreciate so many genres of music. And I've read that you had a collaboration with I believe, a rock or jazz violinist. And I was wondering if you could maybe talk a bit about your collaboration with that.
Are you talking about Charles Yang?
Yes.
Uh, a rocker. Yeah, Charles. So Charles is an alum of From the Top too, and we met at Juilliard freshman year at Juilliard. We were the same year, and Charles is now part of our team of co-hosts at From the Top. Charles was, yeah, I mean, he had a huge impact on me in my career because I was on the fourth floor of Juilliard where all the practice rooms are, and I was just playing some gospel music, just kind of jamming out. And he just burst into the room and was like, "Want to jam?" And I was like, "Yeah, man, let's do it." And that was the beginning of our friendship and the beginning of our collaboration. And we've been playing professionally now for over 10 years as a duo. And you know, for me, I always, at the time that I met Charles, I still felt like my jazz music, my gospel, my pop, like that kind of stuff that I like to do was something I did in the practice room or at home. It was for fun. And again, like it didn't cross my mind that it could be up on stage with the other things. And then I did a concert with Charles and he was like, I'm playing my arrangement of Bohemian Rhapsody on this show. Like, you should play your arrangement of Britney Spears. because I had come up with this like virtuosic theme and variations on a Britney Spears song.
Oh wow.
And I was like, really? He was like, yeah, man, let's do it. And so, he was the one who really encouraged me, like, hey, just play your music. Just do it. And so I think we're still like, we have a friendship and a collaboration where we're constantly like learning from each other and pushing each other to try new things. And so he and I started touring. We realized that we were musically like kindred, spirits, and started performing professionally near the end of our undergraduate time, and uh, we've gone all around the world together.
That's really fascinating. And also after reading about that, seeing like a musician as you are, not only performing classical concerts, but also being in collaboration and performing, rock concerts. And like you said, your arrangement of a Britney Spears song and theme variations. Honestly, I would love to hear that someday live.
There's an old recording on YouTube. I'm not going to say that it's a particularly good quality. It was from a long time ago, but it is still up there. But the thing about that is like, think about what Liszt wrote theme and variations on, Mozart arias, right? That was the pop music of that time. Those were the hits, right? So if you were to ask someone in that time period, like, man, like, I want to take a pop hit and I want to make it a piano piece, it would be like, all right, let's do a aria from Don Giovanni. So like, it's really kind of the same situation, it's like, let's take a pop hit and turn it into this virtuosic showpiece. Um, that's what Liszt was doing.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not trying to compare myself to put myself on the same level as Liszt. Not at
No,
all.
I definitely do see the parallel. I mean, Liszt's, I'm not sure the correct pronunciation, but he wrote a transcription on Don Juan, and that being a pop music of that era, also Britney Spears, there is a clear parallel there. So, I mean, it's great that you brought that up.
There is. And you know what actually got me first into this Britney song is it's like, it's in C sharp minor, and it has this like descending chord progression that goes from 4 to like 1/6, and then to 5/5, and then to flat 2. Right, so the 5/5, instead of going to 5, it walks down through the flat 2 or Neapolitan, and I remember thinking that, and I was like, man, this is kind of hip, and so I turned it into something else. But
I see. That's really amazing to hear. And now for our last segment of our conversation, I would like to kind of tell all our viewers out there, if you do have any questions about Peter Dugan, any question, we will be very happy to answer it live today. So if you do have any questions, feel free to use the YouTube live chat and type it in, and we can probably have time for 2, 3, 4 questions to ask.
yeah, put them in.
I think we have one question here. So someone asks, do you have any advice on how we can expand classical music to non-musicians, perhaps organizations or initiatives student musicians can join to help in that sort of movement?
I mean, I think it gets back to that idea of like, that I was talking about welcoming. And so it doesn't matter who you're crossing paths with. Just think about like, how do I communicate with this person in a way that's going to welcome them into this world. As far as specific, the question was about connecting with non-musicians. Huh?
Non-musicians, yes.
Well, I mean, the thing underlying this, they have to remember, is that most of your audience is not music. It depends on how you define musicians, but most of our audience is even like the bulk of the classical audience, like the people who are showing up at the New York Phil every week. These are not professional musicians, and most of them are not even amateur musicians. Maybe they've played as a kid or something, but these are music lovers, right? So so just kind of remember that like it's so I'm not sure about there. I think there's a subtlety in that question, which is like, is the question about how do we bring classical music to audiences that maybe aren't as familiar with classical music. But if you're asking about bringing it to non-musicians, remember that most of our audience already is non-musicians, right? Or is not, certainly not professional musicians. So in the end, what it comes down to is like we you need to really respect your audience, you know. Yeah. And think about like what yeah what can I give to this audience that's going to like bring them bring them joy and like a meaningful experience. And most of the time, you know, it's not about how, like, perfection. It's not about precision on every note. um the only time when your audience is strictly musicians is like very artificial settings, like studio class in at music school, or like a competition where it's a jury, right? Those are artificial settings. Most of the time in like the real world, your audience is music lovers. They're there because they love music, not because they are themselves musicians. So actually, when you start to think about that, it can be very freeing, and it makes you realize that like what what's going to connect you with your audience is actually like thinking about narrative. Like, how do I tell a story with my program? How do I um, leave the my audience, like, give them something that they can take home with, that like that they can remember in their heart or in their mind, that's like, wow, I felt something tonight, you know what I mean? That's the thing that matters. So uh yeah, I think you can find audiences everywhere you go. And the best way to be an ambassador for classical music is to just be really authentic with it, and to be really respectful of other traditions.
I see. I mean, I agree completely. I mean, in this world, I think you have, you know, a very big group of musicians, but compared to the population of music lovers, you truly can't compare, because people that listen to music truly do outnumber the people that play music. And to be able to connect, you know, musicians to those that love music and love listening and relating to music in general, I think is extraordinary to bridge that gap.
Yeah.
And a question I have is touching upon inspiration. And in terms of your undergraduate and even high school years, were there any influential figures, or you know, famous artists, composers, or or any other musicians that inspired you to be where you are today?
Mm. Many. My my teacher at Juilliard, I already mentioned, Mati Raicalio, is big inspiration. Um, God, famous musicians.
Or just any figure in
I
general?
went. I mean, I went through. I've gone through phases of being obsessed with many musicians, mostly outside of the classical world. Um, like, I was obsessed with Take Six, the group Take Six, vocal on group of six guys. I was obsessed with them for a while, uh, all through high school. Really, there's a jazz organist named Joey DiFrancesco who I listened to nonstop. Um, uh, Avishai Cohen, an Israeli jazz bassist, huge influence on me. Michelle Ndegeocello, a bassist and R&B artist, jazz R&B, and like neo soul before neo soul was a thing. She had her music had a big impact on me. But then personally, just like getting to know Itzhak Perlman through the Perlman music program was a big deal for me, and seeing like the humanity that he brings to everything he does. And the way he is as a teacher, as just like always being so encouraging and supportive and respectful of his students. That had a big impact on me. I met him when I first went to the Perlman program at the age of 14.
Oh,
So all the people there at the Perlman program were, really influenced me a lot. Mary Peckham and the way she approaches chamber music. Um, and then later Rohan de Silva when I was at Juilliard, and the way he uh, approaches chamber music, specifically from the perspective of as a pianist in piano chamber ensembles. Yeah, I mean, I could sit here for an hour and say all the people who moved me. My teacher growing up was Aida Epstein in the Philadelphia area. She is, yeah, I mean, huge influences.
Thank you. And there actually is a question in the live chat. Who is, by chance, your favorite contemporary composer?
Favorite contemporary composer? Well, I happen to have an older brother who's a composer. His name's Leonardo Dugan. And I happen to think that his music is pretty exceptional. So I've got to give him a shout out. Yeah, a lot of great stuff being written these days. But got to give a shout out to my brother there.
I see. And are there, by chance, like what type of music does he write? Are there like jazz influences?
Oh yeah, totally. He's the one who was trained as a jazz saxophonist, so his music is like deeply influenced with the jazz sound world. But he's also like very studied in the classical world, and his counterpoint is off the charts. Also, by the way, we have a lot of great young composers who come through from the top. In fact, just earlier today, I was recording a piece by a composer named Z.E. Tao, who's just like really remarkable. He's a teenager and wrote a fantastic solo piano piece. And we had another composer named Abun Oguntola, her music was on a show just a couple weeks ago. Fantastic. So I get very excited about these teenage composers who I meet through from the top as well.
I see. That's amazing. And there's another question. So on From the Top, being another platform for you to showcase music, what is by chance your favorite genre to play on the program?
Oh, I mean, From the Top, we still exist very much in the classical world. Our listenership is largely classical, enthusiasts, and our radio stations that carry the program are primarily, classical stations. So that's still, by and large, the world we live in the show. And, I love the variety of repertoire we bring to From the Top. So if you listen to a From the Top show, I can almost guarantee you that at least one of the pieces on the program, on any given program, you haven't heard before. And, that's exciting to me. But, what's my favorite to perform? Gosh, it really just like, as every time I'm on the show connecting with a young musician, it's like, I'm the kind of musician who lives in the moment. I don't know about you, Justin, but like when someone asks me like, who's your favorite composer? It's like, well, whatever piece I'm playing right now. So I think that's a healthy way to be, which is just like love the musical world you're creating at that exact moment. So like when I'm playing Beethoven, I'm like, this is the greatest music of all time. And when I'm playing, Duke Ellington, like, this is the greatest music of all time. So it doesn't matter. Whatever music I'm playing at that moment. Sorry if that's a cop-out answer.
No, I agree completely. I mean, when people ask me what my favorite composer is, I completely blank out. And I resort to a composer that I'm playing at the moment.
Yeah.
So I think it's very instinctual, and I think it's great to not, I would say, isolate a specific composer and kind of relay that answer onto, music that you're currently working on to, get a better appreciation and a better, taste of being in the moment, like you said. So
totally. I agree.
And finally, one final question for this conversation is, what is one thing you wish you would have known, or someone had told you when you were in high school or college, or anywhere in your younger years, anything that like stuck with you from an early age to now?
Well, hang on a second. Something that someone did tell me, or something that I wished someone had told me?
Something you wish let's just keep it to something that you wish you'd known when you were in high school that you
Something
would
that I
like
wish
to
I'd
tell us?
known. Something that I wish I'd known. Okay, the one thing that I wish I'd known is that there's not going to be a big break. Um, I kept reading. I felt like that was always the story that was put forward. Was that you're going to get your big break, um, and that's how a career happens. And the sort of corollary to that was that there's a idealized, like, not to get too philosophical, but like the platonic kind of ideal of like the successful career of a pianist. And I think that goes hand in hand with this concept of there's a big break, because then that, to follow that one step further, it's like, oh, competitions, or um, yeah, or just being in the right place at the right time, that kind of thing. And I really, really believe now, I mean, like I said at the very beginning, I'm still on this journey with all of you. But based on the past 10 years or so since I graduated school, um, I really feel that there's not such a thing as a big break. Or if there is, it happens once in a generation. But for most people who get a career in music, we don't have the big break. Uh, that's an illusion. But what actually happens is it's lots of little breaks, little tiny break here, little tiny break there, and it stacks, right? And and it's all about uh, how you represent yourself every time you play music, yes, but also every time you meet someone, right? Because it's not always just about how you play; it's about how you interact, and it's about thinking about the sort of the long game, um, because you might have, when I talk about these tiny breaks, right? If you When you first have one of those little tiny breaks, think about the potential in that moment and what it could mean in the long game, 3 years out, 5 years out. um, so that's kind of the way the career gradually like blossoms. I think it's through just like you have to be patient, and you have to like stay the course and believe in what you're doing and know yourself. Like self knowledge is so important, because don't just think about this idealized piano. Like if you making it as a pianist means playing concertos with all the major orchestras, playing recitals at all the big venues, and winning all the competitions, end of story. Like that's not true, because we've talked a couple times tonight about the isolation that a pianist can experience, right? And that also goes part of that. Now, some people are like, I don't care. That, so for some personalities, that's not an issue. It's a non-issue. It's like I just want to be on the road 24/7. But like for myself, like I thrive in social interaction and in like having a partner on stage. I enjoy playing solo music. I love that too for other reasons. But like if I had to have a whole season where I don't get to collaborate with anyone and I'm just by myself in the practice room, by myself in the hotel, by myself on stage, by myself backstage, like that's not for me. Again, that might be for some other people, but this goes back to the idea of self-knowledge. Like you have to know yourself, know what brings you joy, and like let that influence where you start to like see your career move. And right, and like what are the things you say yes to, what are the things you don't say yes to. That should be influenced by your your knowledge of what you love, and also by that sense of long game. You know what I mean? So I don't know, it's not really a clear answer, it's a little rambly, I apologize. It's been a long day. I was recording for 5 hours today, but basically, yeah, that's kind of the sum of it, is like don't really try to break free of this idea that there's like the way, and that like anything short of being like the star soloist is somehow less. It's not. And that's not that. The way the careers in music work is that your career will have all kinds of fun to it, and like this variety is the spice of life kind of thing. You know what I mean? So just follow the music, follow your passions, and follow what you love and your own happiness. And I think you can't go wrong. Yeah.
Oh, I think that's a wonderful way to close out this conversation. I mean, personally, that idea of making a big break, I think, is on the mind of every single musician. I don't think there's a single musician that believes like in like the small breaks, as you can say. I think it's primarily learned through experience, and to have someone impart like such wisdom at all the viewers probably or most listening at a young age, considering or even already pursuing a career in music. I think that's really invaluable to hear.
Yeah,
So
cool, man. I'm happy to hear you say that. Like, I think that I think if you wait your whole life hoping that a big break will come, you're setting yourself up for disappointment. Yeah, maybe you'll be that one person who gets like suddenly boom. But um it's much more exciting if every time a little something happens, you go, "Oh, that's good. Oh, how can I like, if you think about it as a seed, like how do I water the seed and give it light and give it air and give it the potential, that seed the potential to grow. But at the same time, I also have a seed over here and I pour a little water on that and that might grow. Oh, but then, oh, this one's doing good. That one didn't do so good. But guess what? I have another seed over there that I haven't tended to in a little while, but I just got a call from someone and that's watering. You know what I mean? And that's how eventually you get a nice little garden going, right? It's rather than like, it's one seed and you're like, dear God, please bloom.
yeah.
Anyway, that's a metaphor that's new for me. I've never tried that one before.
Yeah, very true, very true. I mean, it's not like you win the Clyburn competition and your career is set, but there's more. I think there's more of a journey, like you said, and having
Yeah,
different avenues. I think it's an
exactly.
amazing
Because
perspective.
yeah, exactly. Because even if you guess what, even if you do win the Clyburn, that doesn't make your career. I had a really, I just was teaching at a brand new piano festival. Actually, you all should know about it. I mean, it's ages 18 and up, which not I know not everyone at Hope is 18 yet, but um, it's called Soundboard, and it's part of the Honeywell Arts Academy. It's a brand new festival. We just did for the first time earlier this month, and or in June. I guess that was, it's July now. Yeah, last month. But the faculty was myself and John O'Connor, the great pianist, great teacher, and uh, so. But sidebar, you all should check it out if you're 18 and up and you're a pianist. But anyway, the reason why I brought it up is because I got to talking with, well, we had a night where we all sat around and talked about this kind of stuff and career and everything. And John O'Connor talked about his story. And I always kind of assumed that once he won the Beethoven competition in Vienna, that was his big break, right?
Yeah.
That's the story that we get told. And that's not really the way it was for him. Like he won the Beethoven competition and he was not getting concerts after that right away. His management was terrible. Like it was years from the time he won the Beethoven competition to the time that he was really like concertizing regularly at the highest level. um you know so anyway, and as much as that was the case decades ago when he was a competition winner, it's even more so now. um
Mhm.
you gotta play that long game.
True. And with so many competitions out there, winning one isn't going to set yourself up. You have to have, these small things that you said. So.
Totally.
Well, all in all, I would just like to say thank you so much for coming out and being part of this conversation. It truly was a joy to, hear your incredible journey from an early age to now, and the very fascinating aspects of your life from the top, and collaborations, jazz music, and improvisations. There's so much we've talked about, and I just like to say again, thank you so much for being part of this today.
Well, thanks to you, Justin, and to everyone at Hope and Kevin and all of you. y- y- Thanks for hosting so brilliantly, man. I better watch my back. My you might take my job if I'm not careful. Yeah, no, it's been a joy, and I encourage all of you who are in the sort of Hope family of pianists to reach out to me, and you know you can find me pretty easily on social media and online and stuff. And I really believe that us pianists need to look out for each other. So I'm here as a resource for all of you.
Thank you very much. And to all the viewers out there, I would just like to say thank you again for tuning in and watching us. I would just like to also let you know that this webinar will be available to the public. We will get this posted on YouTube in about a day or so. So definitely keep notice for us. And with that, thank you again. And I hope that you all have a wonderful evening.
Thanks, Justin. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.